looking at very closely because for a brief part of my career, I worked in Rapid City, South Dakota. In fact, the house that my wife and myself bought there was like 15 minutes away from Mount Rushmore. And you see, you know, the national parks and what they mean to this country, and the fact that they're being looked at as a profit-bearing entity. I think Teddy Roosevelt, when he was, you know, first president to really push for saving parts of this country, to keep them as they are, not to turn them into something that's commercially, it's supposed to be something that's supposed to endear ourselves to the beauty of this country. And it scares me with the current personnel that's there. I know that if I'd be in the Congress, there'd be holy hell coming out of my mouth, screaming about these thoughts of just, oh yeah, let's just give it out to the highest bidder. Wrong. Not while I'm around.
Always go.
Issues that gets me so upset I can hardly think about it. It's kind of like watching this current crew that's running our nation right now. It's kind of like watching folks run into your house and break things and steal your heirlooms. This is one of those things. Very short-sighted and personalized. They've personalized our federal government and our resources, our assets, everything. That is not how this country was founded. It's not how it's our laws are designed, and we need to get that straightened out quick. I just there seems to be no thought of following generations. You know, this federal land belongs to all of us and to our children and their children. It must be protected. So that's how I feel about it.
Ridiculous. It makes me think of CEO in Chief from that Pixar movie WALL-E, and the planet in that movie and how it looks. I mean, like, this is the path that we're potentially going down if we continue this route. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, preserving these public places is crucial. I mean, it's helpful for us. I mean, why I'm in Wisconsin is because we used to recreate or recreate ourselves to come up to Wisconsin to enjoy the Northern Highlands. Then we go up to Lake Superior and hike the National Lake Shore and go to the Apostle Islands and camps. I mean, this whole thing of having public space that we can all share is crucial to who we are as humans. And there is the issue too that it's okay to have parts of the country that we actually say humans are going to touch very lightly, because before the humans were here, there was a whole environment here and animals here, and it's okay to have wilderness zones too. So certainly, for all my life, whether it was backpacking in Colorado or backpacking along Lake Superior, I mean, it's a huge part of what's enriched my life is having these public spaces where we preserve the nature that's there for us.
I'm going to ask a question. And what are you going to do about it? Is your campaign ready to handle this sort of thing? I think Brian's okay.
Well, the answer is yes. I mean, if you play hockey, you expect to get checked. And I think campaigning, we certainly stay on the high road and keep it about values and policies, but that's where we can have this discussion. It does not need to be underhanded. I mean, clearly Duffy is the incumbent of following the playbook, which is ignore the challenger for as long as possible. So I think one of the ways is this room is part of the solution to that problem. You are here, you're engaged, and the more Duffy's campaign has to face the fact that the Democrats are ready to change this back to a blue district, the more he's going to have to engage on that. And then you get to the point where now he needs to debate, and so then you get to the point where you can negotiate the terms of the debate. And unfortunately for Mary, I think he felt like his best tactic was, I'll just ignore her. And that's what he did right up until the end.
And then when he set the debates, then when she complained about it, he said, well, you don't wanna have debates,
Right.
which was just like absurd.
Yeah, but absolutely, I mean, I think, you know, politics is, not physically, but certainly in an emotional context for it. And I recognize that getting into this, and I've certainly been in challenging emotional situations many times in my life. I've had to tell people difficult news that nobody wants to hear. I've had to stand in the office as a professional before, and that's what I envision doing as the candidate for the Democratic Party, is stand in the office, hold firm, be the adult in the room.
Tom?
I've worked in a pretty unforgiving and elitist industry for a long time, and this is definitely a much larger pond. But you can only do so much to prepare, but it's, yeah, I'll do it, for sure.
Anybody been to one of his town halls? Boy, I never went to one before this last summer. I'd never seen anything like it. So, folks would stand up and they'd say their question or whatever, and then it was like he rifled through his file cabinet of his brain and picked a pre-recorded message that was closest matched to the question. And out it came, and then if the person wanted to, you know, well, that's not what I asked, or could you tell me where this, poof, it was pointless after that point. I have no fear of Sean Duffy. I just don't know how useful it would be to talk to him, but I am more than happy to do it. I have tangled with lawyers in and outside of the courtroom to advocate and to fight for the position of my client. So, yeah, let's do it.
He's a lumberjack and he's okay.
That's the truth.
In my profession, in radio for over 40 years, as a program director and operations manager, I have worked in very competitive markets. I worked in the Milwaukee market back in the 80s. I came up to this part of the world in 1988 to help put a radio station on the air. You may have heard of it, it's WDEZ. It was in Wausau, and 100,000 watts. It used to be an easy listening station. That's why it has the college at WDEZ. So they brought me to town with my experience in Milwaukee and Peoria, Illinois, running program stations. And I said, well, what do you want to do, Bob? Why don't we play country? So I'm responsible for that, okay? You don't like the station, it's on me. What I'm saying is this: when I came to town in 1988 in Wausau, here was this, market that everything was just kind of like, okay, you guys are this and that, everyone's happy, and then they brought me from the outside. So the first thing, I can walk in, into my office, and we have a station van, and the place where we had the station was tucked away. You couldn't really see from the roadways, but it has a station van. So I said, where's the keys to the van? And my assistant said, so I gave them to my guy who's doing the mornings. He said, here, drive the van. Where? Take it home, drive around town. I don't care. You go grocery shopping. It has our call letters on the side of it, for God's sake. It's a rolling billboard. Why aren't we promoting ourselves? Wow, we never thought about doing that. I don't know if that happens up around here, but whenever radio stations set up for remotes, and they have their vehicles, and they always have those lights up on top. Yes. Guess whose idea that was? I took the things that I learned in Milwaukee, where you were like butting heads against your competitors, to make yourself known, to get in front of the people, to put out a better product, a better idea, and to sell it to the people, and look what happens. So if you don't think I can handle him, and plus the fact I got a voice. That's loud. You can't get away with the stuff that unfortunately Mary had to put up with because she's just too nice of a lady.
I promised the candidates we'd get out of here by 6.
Matta's Helmers. Okay, I have a two-part question. Where we've got a broken healthcare system. 39th in the world for the quality of our healthcare. We leave so many people out. We spend twice what other civilized countries spend. We have the highest infant mortality rate. Number one, what would you do real quickly to improve our health care? And number two, where do you stand on single-payer Medicare for all health care? I'm not gonna call it insurance.
I think that's when it's set up for Brian, so we'll let him go last.
Okay.
Kyle?
Can you repeat the first part of the question? I'm sorry.
Yes. What would you do to improve our health care? And number two, where do you stand specifically on single-payer health care? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up. We're the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have.
Yeah.
We're the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have a single payer system, so I completely support a system like Medicare for all, because that builds a base for all of us. Like I said, it makes risks more easily attainable, and just in terms of starting your own business or switching jobs, or even having the relief of not worrying about walking outside and slipping on the ice and falling into financial ruin. Yeah, so thumbs up completely.
Margaret?
Margaret.
Yes, Medicare for all. You can't snap your fingers and do it overnight, of course. We've been constructing our healthcare system for decade after decade after decade. And there's a lot of folks that fall through the cracks. We're paying more than that even makes sense. So the first thing we need to do is actually make a commitment to doing it, and then start planning and acting accordingly. And to be honest with ourselves, that this will take transition time. As I said earlier, one of the things that we can do is start allowing people to buy into the Medicare system itself as a first step. So, absolutely.
First of all, the health of every American, should not be based on a for-profit business. I never could, I have a hard time comprehending that. My sister was a longtime nurse in Milwaukee, St. Luke's Hospital down there. And we get into big discussions, I'm sure, just like you probably do with your, some of your relatives. I says, I have a hard time just fathoming that if someone is sick, let's help them. Let's get them healthy. And why are we making decisions? Geez, do we buy food for the home, or do we cut my medication in half? Those are questions that should never have to be concerning an American, a citizen of this great country of ours. It just doesn't make sense. Other countries have proven that that's a working process. It's not going to be one of these things you can just, like you said, snap your fingers, make it happen. But we can make it happen. We've already done that with Medicare. It's not perfect. Nothing is. That's what the Republicans love. But it does not give Affordable Care Act. Oh, gosh, it isn't working. Well, of course it's not going to work. Social Security, when it first started, didn't work just right. It changes, additions, subtractions, what works, what doesn't work, and you get it better. You make it work. You make it serve the people. That's what can happen also with healthcare, in my opinion.
And as a doctor, you were just something to say about that.
Well, first of all, the reason I'm in Marshfield is because when I came out of my training, I wanted to be working for an entity that took care of everyone in the service area regardless of ability to pay. So that's why I'm in Marshfield. And that was my values for going into medicine, it's my values for where I work. I think when we get into the two issues you bring up, one is how do we actually talk about population health? And, you know, it turns out what makes us healthy actually has only a little bit to do with medical facilities. Medical facilities are kind of there for when the other stuff didn't work. And there's certainly a lot of thought that goes into what do you do to make healthy communities, what do you do at the community health level. I mean, the infant mortality issue, that has to do with the whole maternal and fetal medicine, and that's not having more neonatal ICUs, that's having community medicine support so that pregnant women get this care they need, get the contacts they need so they have a healthy pregnancy, and then when their babies are born, they have a healthy environment. So a lot of that is very low tech. It does mean changing the financial incentives that we currently have baked into our system, and so you need to shift towards paying more for quality and less for quantity is kind of the buzzword. It's not doing more things to people, it's doing the right things for people. And so certainly continuing to work on those models. The Affordable Care Act started that. There actually was an innovation center, and there have been a series of experiments run. Some of the experiments have actually been successful, some of the experiments haven't been successful. That's how we learn. I mean, that's the Thomas Edison. How do you finally find tungsten to light up the bulb? We need to keep working on that. Luckily, other countries have been working on this. We can learn from them. I think when you come down to healthcare financing, we really get into the politics of the possible. And our challenge was that back in 2009, for a brief 6 months, we had a filibuster-proof Senate and a majority in the House and a Democrat sitting as president. And even in that environment, they kept trying to bring out the single-payer option, and they could not get the votes to do it. And so that, we may be changing. I think we're going to keep moving towards this notion that single-payer, that people can buy into it. Because the truth is that the U.S. government already pays for over 50% of the healthcare in the country. It doesn't insure over 50%, but in terms of the people who need most healthcare are already on government-paid programs. So we already have this. And so then you say, well, what models can we work with so that as soon as you mention this, you don't have your carpet bombing of your TV with interest ads from the moneyed interests in healthcare, which unfortunately their pockets are deep, they're well-funded, and they like their money. And so there are various models. One is what we've done with public utilities. So we allow monopolies in our communities, and they're regulated public utilities. And so we say, yes, you can be a for-profit or not-for-profit utility, but you're going to be governed by community members that are going to set rates, set costs, and work towards the good of the people. And so you can go with the public utility model for healthcare. You can go saying one way to get costs down for entrepreneurs who are in the private insurance market is to continue to move higher cost patients into the government programs. Medicaid already covers 60% of the childbirths in Wisconsin. And that's always a big issue. It's like, well, women need more expensive healthcare. It's like, yeah, but guys, how did that happen? So men are playing a role in this. But so, there's various ways that you continue to unburden. Clearly what we got into in the last 10 years is high deductible health plans and businesses shifting the cost of healthcare to workers. And that's where the huge pain is, especially for those people who are getting above the Affordable Care Act levels. And we need to continue to find ways to address that because it is, I've had people who run their own business and they've got the $10,000 deductible and they have been prudent, they have saved. They come to me and they say, okay, I got smacked with a kidney disease, nothing they did to cause it, they got it. And they'll say to me, you can do everything you want this year, I've got $10,000 in my health savings account. But next year, you've got to be done because I don't have another $10,000. And that's exactly the person. We need to address their pain, and there are a lot of ways to keep working this. It's incrementally. I actually was on the phone with Dave Obey about this last week, and his comment, he says, we've made it to second base, we probably can't quite run to home yet, but let's try and get to third base and continue to address the very concerns you bring up. The community health issues, as well as the cost of doing business, which we're currently getting a bad product and we're paying twice as much for it. And we need to keep going after
It's our current health insurance industry model.
Yeah.
And, it's the #1 reason for bankruptcy, and those people have health insurance.
Absolutely.
So who here in the room is interested in us as a nation having single-payer health care? Okay?
Yeah. Like I say, it's a great goal to get to. I guess the question is, what path do we go to get there? because even Medicare is, 4 different programs plus sub-programs. And I think it's the complexity, it is 1/6 of the US economy. And so whatever we do has to be done incrementally. It's the second largest employer in the 7th district. And so again, you want to move in a controlled and gradual way to becoming more efficient and more healthy. And how do we do that without disrupting the labor market in our economy?
It would really help our labor market. And it would also improve the care between us and our doctor.
Oh, yeah.
It would bring it right to them. We need somebody to really pick up the gauntlet and run for us because people are dying.
Yeah.
So,
No, your concerns are spot on. I mean, the whole way we've gone about healthcare, and especially prior to the Affordable Care Act, where definitely insurance companies just wanted to insure you when you were healthy and then you were out. And of course, there's been this huge attack on the Affordable Care Act, and it's not perfect. I mean, it needs to be built on. But it did put pieces in place, so at least when people have purchased insurance, they're actually going to get coverage when they hit the ER.
One of the fundamental, highest priorities that we must do as a nation, because it's the foundation of everything else, right? I think that we should only use taxpayer money towards public education. And that we should treat our teachers and the education system like the value that it is, right? And expect high standards from them and also pay them well for their expertise and their hard work. It seems like it's an easy target to just keep going, oh, let's cut that, and over time, it's really left us in a pickle, right? I think that subjects-wise, I think that we should start teaching civics and history as part of the curriculum instead of just getting people through primarily, like have a more broad-based education. So yeah, we need to actually invest in it. Investment is how we're gonna grow and thrive. Right now, they've been kind of going on the cheap and cutting taxes and all that, and we're paying the price for it right now. We're in a lot of debt, and we've got a unfortunately very divided populace that can't even agree on the same facts now. It's an alarming situation. So
I find it interesting that their GOP has been attacking teachers and teacher unions for the last 30 years, but now they want to give them guns.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, simply we just need to make education, we need to keep education.
Kyle, speak up, please.
Oh, sorry. We need to keep education free and accessible. And I'm gonna tie this to the recent net neutrality laws that went into place and not suppressing access to the information highway that is the internet. I mean, that's how I grew up with the internet and was able to educate myself even outside of school on what was going on outside of the world and anything I wanted to learn how to do. Like, for example, this weekend I'm going to have to install some ceiling fans, and I can actually just look up how to do that very easily. And with what's happening now, if net neutrality goes into place, a lot of things are going to be suppressed and knowledge is going to be stifled. And not just that, but a lot of the tariffs that are going through on private education, and just keeping learning public and accessible.
Public education is one of the founding principles of our country. When Thomas Jefferson, when he said, this is what the maps will look like, he put the public school right on the map. So this is crucial that we have public education supported with public dollars. And it's the great equalizer. It's what does allow all Americans to get on the ladder, no matter what your station is in life. And so I think crucially for the children is there needs to be public education, certainly K through 12, and then after high school is making sure that children do have a way to get the extra training to get into the job market. So if they're looking at higher skills, and whether, like I say, technical or college, whatever they are, they have a financial pathway to get there successfully. You know, it's somewhat unfortunate that over the last 10 years, all of a sudden, the most sought after jobs are financial services, which are kind of hedge fund managers, Wall Street, you know, the great casino in the sky sort of stuff, as opposed to teachers and educators and engineers and the people who actually build and do stuff and create the next generation. So I mean, I think, spot on, we need teachers. I mean, those are the most important people in our life. I mean, when we get, you know, into our adulthood, we think back, who are the important people in my life? There's always teachers in that mix. And I think we need to continue to highly value them and show that we value them and have our, you know, our money goes where our values go.
Education, very important. One thing, school vouchers, out. I'm totally against school voucher programs. If public money is going to schools, it should be going to public schools. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but that's just my thought on it. If you want to send somebody to a private school, well, pay for the tuition yourself. But don't sit there and get a voucher for that. Second of all, as far as the funding education and funding some of the things that you mentioned before, we keep ignoring that huge elephant in the room when you start looking at the budget, the United States budget. The Defense Department, military spending. 56% of what we pay for goes to them. I'm not saying, gee, let's just cut all the money out of there, but really, if the Defense Department and the Pentagon wants to build 20 brand new stealth bombers at $1 billion each, how about just living with 15? And there's $5 billion available. How do you think that would help with education? How do you think that would help as far as the wages of quality teachers? So they get paid a reasonable wage to teach our children. Why not? It seems a lot of people are afraid to turn to that military industrial complex and say, hey, we happen to notice that on your budget here, we have $350 here for this hammer. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So a little bit more looking at other parts of this U.S. budget may not be a bad idea, and start putting it where it should go.
I'd like to thank the candidates for coming. I know
This is the day the Lord has made. Let's rejoice and be glad in it. Can you ask for a better way? I mean, come on. You're in Wisconsin. My name is Bob Look, and I want to be your congressman. Why? Well, it's been pretty self-evident here in the past few years, and with the person who's currently in that position. Let me tell you a little bit about myself before we go any farther. You heard some of the details, you know, my professional background, all that. But why I wanted to get involved was I'm a firm believer in a representative government. When you are elected, you're not elected to serve just a few people or just a certain people or certain people who are bankrolling your campaign. You're there to represent everybody, whether they agree with you or don't agree with you. My job, as I look at it, as a representative, would be to listen to everybody, all sides. You're only going to be more informed and make a better decision for everyone when you get the information. And I always harken back to people who I looked up to when I was younger. People like Senators Bill Proxmire and Gaylord Nelson, who served the state so well over the years. And I'm going to also, throw out, other names, like, of course, the congressman who had represented this area, or most of this area for so many years, David Obey, and how responsive he was to his constituents. Now, I was born and raised on the south side of Milwaukee, you know, and as soon as I walked in this building, the first thing I thought of, this takes me back to my grade school days at St. Albert's Church in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The dark brown frame, wooden floors, and the nuns.
No nuns here.
No nuns here. I'll tell you what, the discipline was there. In those 8 years, got me going in and into the public schools. And graduated from South Milwaukee High School. Musician. I was playing in country music bands when I was 15 years old, which is illegal as heck. But we did that. It was a great way to make some money. Moved on to trying to find myself in the working world. Couldn't afford college. My mom and dad, hardworking blue-collar people. My dad was a machinist, a union machinist, and then one day he had an idea to open up a family grocery store. So we had a family grocery store in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin for well over 15 years. Looks Self-Service, it was called. Dad was a butcher, mother was doing the checkout. And of course, I'm there, my brother and sister, filling in, stocking shelves, sweeping the store after every day. But I also was living in the south side of Milwaukee where there was a representative who had been there for so many years, Clem Zablocki, who was a congressman down the south side of Milwaukee. Some of you older folks remember that name. He was there for, I'd say 40 years. He would go out when he would have his elections or re-elections. He'd spend a grand total of $300 for his re-election. And basically it was, back in that day, to get matchbooks with his name on it. That was a lot. That's it. And he kept getting elected year in, year out. Why? Because he was a representative. I remember my father calling him, and again, my father's no big donor. He was just and he would have something to deal with the federal government. He would call Zablocki's office. His secretary would say, Congressman Zablocki will get right back to you either this afternoon or by first thing in the morning. And sure enough, first thing in the morning, phone would ring, and there he is. Hey Ray, what's the problem? That's how I envision what representative government is. That is what I want to bring to the 7th District. I don't come in with some prefab, notion that I'm going to do things this way or I'm going to do. Hey, I'm going to be one of 435, but I'm going to be the one that's representing you, the 7th District, in Washington. And why is that important? Because right now we're not being represented. We're being represented by a person who takes money from the wealthy, the corporations, and he is basically a puppet on strings to the whims of those high wealthy interests. Whatever they say goes. How many of you folks out there have either called the current congressman's office to, just raise your hand. Now, how many times and how was the response? Was there a response? Was there even an acknowledgement? Maybe an email saying, oh, well, we got your call. We'll take it into consideration. Yeah, well, thanks a lot. You're kidding me. When you get sent to Washington, they fund you to have staff in Washington. They also fund you to have a staff back in your home area to service your constituents. Where are they? Maybe because you weren't one of those people who were throwing gobs of money at him. I guess that phone call isn't important. I believe one person, one vote. That's the way I go. I could have some great backer who's going to say, Bob, I want to write you a check. I go, thank you very much. I appreciate this. I will do my best to serve you. But that person does not mean anything more to me in this district than say a single mother of two who's working like 2 waitress jobs, living in a trailer park, trying to make ends meet, probably living on food stamps, just trying to get by. To me, they're the same. I want to represent them all I can say is I will do my best, and I will give you the effort that you expect out of a representative. Not a congressman. I hate that. I'm sure Marge hates that word too, congressman. Shouldn't be a congressman, it should be a member of Congress. So I appreciate your attention. I'm sure we'll be having questions and answers and things of that later on. I'll welcome talking to you afterwards. I have a little 1 page that I'll, after we're done chatting, you can take a look at. Something to remember me by, and we'll go from there. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Beautiful day coming inside so we can talk about issues that matter to us. Well, today I started out my day at a community fundraiser. We had our annual event where we raise funds for our food pantry. And so I got to serve soup, and it's always a joy to be there. But I was able to witness something that to me just speaks to who we are in the 7th District. Because served the soup to this one couple, and then they're going out into the ballroom to find a seat, and they go up to a table, and the tables were set up with about 6 chairs. And you know, we're a town of 20,000, so we don't all know each other real well, all of us. But sure enough, this couple goes up to the table, and they look at the people there, and they say, "Oh, hi, we're so-and-so, can we join you?" And of course the answer was, "By all means, have a seat." And I think for all of us, you know, a stranger is just the friend we haven't yet made yet. And that's the way we come together. That I have witnessed how through the strength of our communities, we solve our problems. We've done that in the past. We'll keep solving them as we go forward into the future. And of course, there are a series of problems that need our attention. First one, which of course is very near and dear to me because every day when I go to work, I witness it, is universal health care. And we have this tremendous foundation that we've built up through Medicare to make sure that our elders have their care, to Medicaid that makes sure that elders have nursing home coverage, that mothers have care for babies, and so that people have access to care. And then layering on top of that, the Affordable Care Act. Again, bringing more people in for adequate, accessible, affordable care, but we clearly haven't solved all the problems. We still do have problems in middle-class families who are not able to make ends meet because they encounter a medical crisis. It's another problem we're going to need to solve. And there are ways that we can come together to do that. And I'm certainly committed to working towards continued building on the foundations that already exist. The next problem we need to address is education. Clearly, the clearest path to a sustainable wage is education after high school. And whether that be through the technical colleges, a 2-year college, a 4-year degree, but that's the clearest path to a sustainable economic future. Unfortunately, the funding of that has been taken over by the lenders. And so as opposed to previous generations, where coming out of World War II, Franklin Roosevelt, one of his last ideas was the GI Bill to make sure that when the troops came home, they had a path forward. Moving forward into the 60s and 70s with the grants and the true subsidized student loans that truly allowed people to get their education, get established, and then start paying back their loans. Many of those programs have been diluted and do not cover the cost of education. And now it is common for a 24-year-old to be trying to launch into a successful adulthood with $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 of debt. And of course, that's obviously pretty rough on the 40 million Americans who carry that debt, but it's actually hard on all of us because then these people cannot start participating in buying houses, buying cars, participating in the middle-class lifestyle, which we clearly hold out as the American dream. So we need to address the student loan problem and find ways that we keep skin in the game for our students, but at the same time making sure that they're not hobbled for the rest of their life as they enter their adulthood. Infrastructure is a huge issue. We need roads, we need bridges, and of course, here in Price County, you desperately need broadband. You know, clearly, this is one of the best examples of how we in the 7th District can just get a sense that we've been left behind. And so in other parts of the state and the country, people are tapping into 50 megabytes and streaming high-resolution movies. Here, you know, are you still feeling like you're dialing up your modem and listening to those modem signals coming through to 1440 or something extremely low down the bandwidth? So we need broadband, and it's not just so we can stream movies. It's so people can have businesses. It's so that people can choose to not live in Chicago and Minneapolis and still be gainfully employed through internet-based employment. We need broadband to support our communities. We need it. Clearly, we need the roads and bridges. This is how logging trucks move. This is how the business of Wisconsin happens. The products get to market, the manufactured goods get out of the state. So it's crucial that we have infrastructure programs to make sure that we have the mechanisms of our economy in place. Fourth issue, which has also been fairly close to us in the last year, is Citizens United. Last fall, a good friend of ours got very energized about Citizens United and said, you know, we can't get an amendment through onto the Constitution yet, but there is a groundswell of local communities coming together and getting initiatives on the ballot through United to Amend. And so now over half the people in Wisconsin have had the opportunity to issue their voice on that Citizens United needs to be repealed so that corporations and billionaires from Wichita are not trying to tell us in Wisconsin how to do our business. And so Kathleen and I got on board with our good friend, and we started knocking door to door, going to the library, gathering signatures. In a matter of about 5 weeks, gathered up 1,300 signatures. So come the first week of April, people in Marshall get a chance to vote on the resolution that corporations are not people and money is not free speech, and it's time to return the political process to the people who are being represented. Next issue is we need renewable sources of energy. And this is one of those issues that we need renewable sources of energy for our local economy because of the people who install solar panels, the people who service that. That's good for us, but we need it for our children, we need it for our grandchildren, we need it for our great-grandchildren, and keep going. This is our responsibility to those who will come after us. And I think we need to honor that responsibility in terms of how we have our energy come to us and how we take care of our planet, how we take care of our environment. And clearly, renewable energy has that wonderful synergism between economic strength and responsibility to those who will come after us. So a crucial part of the plan. And at the end of this, we need to continue to find ways to strengthen the rural economy. And the rural economy needs strengthening through healthcare and education and infrastructure and broadband and renewable energy. And all those things come together because this is a wonderful place to live. This is a great place to live. I mean, my commute went from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, but that's because I chose to walk to work now instead of drive to work. And that's the kind of life we have. I mean, in Marshall, we obviously have people come from around the globe to work for us. And I was talking to my colleague the other day, she's from Chicago. She said, I would have never thought I would be working in a place like Marshall, but she's overjoyed to be working in a place like Marshall. It's safe, it's convenient, you know, it's a great place. So I think throughout the 7th District, that's the message we can bring, and I think that's what I feel called to do, to speak to that. So, as Steve mentioned, for 25 years, I've devoted my life to serving the patients of the 7th District, and I really want to extend that to serving the people of the 7th District. I've served these people both as a doctor as well as a healthcare executive, understanding the complexities of what it's like to live here, and having witnessed people's joys and struggles, their incredible strength. I think we can continue to move forward, and even if we're not always top of mind and at times we feel left behind, I think we have what it takes to be a strong community and to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the party and the venue for hosting us. It's an amazing day outside. It's great to be here. That's basically my entire bio, so I guess go into my views and my opinions on how to move this district along with our great state and our country forward. So quickly, I just want to note, I grew up in Chippewa Falls. My dad worked in department stores and factories his entire life. And my mom, she's a secretary, and she has been since I was born. And before that, she cut hair. That's actually how my parents met. One fateful day, my dad walked over to Fantastic Sam's, got a haircut. Now I'm here talking about all that. And as the bio mentioned, in the introduction mentioned, I was truly inspired by my grandfathers growing up. They were both serial entrepreneurs who turned their passions into livelihoods. And I followed into their footsteps with my love of music and the arts. And for the past 10 years, I have been managing a local musician, I guess you could say, from Eau Claire by the name of Justin Vernon and his band, Boney Bear, or as it looks phonetically, Bon Iver. And that's okay. That's how I said it at first when I first saw it as well. And I've helped Justin for the past decade go from being a sad guy with an acoustic guitar to a world-touring, multi-Grammy award-winning platinum selling artist. And him and I have taken the business of the band and we've turned it from a 4-person touring operation to a multi-million-dollar grossing company that employs 30 plus people. And we've done all of that right here in northwestern Wisconsin. We stayed in Eau Claire. We've taken our success and we've pumped it back into the community of Eau Claire. Not just us, a few other like-minded individuals. I was told as a high school student by a mentor of mine that it takes just one person or a group of like-minded people to really change a place. And I've watched Eau Claire become that place. You drive downtown now, and it's a completely different city than it was even just 5 years ago. So, I got into this race not because I want to be a politician. I never once thought I would be a politician. Hell, I don't even think I want to be a politician. I got into this race because I want to be a representative. And because this area that means so much to me and my family, is not being clearly represented. It's very apparent. Our current congressman, like our dear governor and the speaker himself, has been corrupted by the greed of politics. And that's not what we're about. Those aren't the values that we learn here in Wisconsin. And I think it's about due time to show our former reality star congressman an actual dose of reality. I think it's time to bring a bit more Wisconsin back to Washington. Because the resources that I had available to me growing up, the resources that allowed me to accomplish the things that I accomplished, they're disappearing. Opportunities, resources that garner opportunities. Growing up, I had access to things, simple things like the internet, which allowed me to see the world outside of my small town of 14,000. My parents had good jobs with decent benefits. My public education got me to where I needed to be because I had teachers who cared, because they were cared for. I was given the opportunity to take risks, to fail, to try again. And that opportunity is becoming less and less the case these days, especially for young people. It's no wonder that this whole rural-urban divide we keep hearing so much about is actually our present, and may as well continue to be our future. For my generation, and I just turned 30, moving to a large city is no longer a novelty, it's a necessity, because that's where the resources are. That's where the opportunities lie. The quality education. A good job that leads to a lasting career. Even public transit. And I'm not talking about turning a place like Wausau into a booming metropolitan city. I'm just talking about resources and opportunities. So in my opinion, the solution is relatively simple. We need to start coming together. We need to start listening to each other. We need to make a plan that we can all agree on. And that plan starts from the bottom up, not from the top down. We need to build a base. And that base starts with universal health care. A program like Medicare for All. Because health care is a right, not a privilege. With Medicare for All, Risks can more easily be taken. Families can more easily get ahead. We can all live with a bit more relief. We need to invest in our nation's #1 commodity, our children and our young people, by supporting our public schools and our teachers. Because if we keep going down this path, the mess that we're going to be leaving our future leaders is going to take a heck of a lot of brain power to unravel. And we need a strong economy. We need to make starting your own business much more accessible. Universal health care will help immensely with that. But so will a living wage. Raising the federal minimum wage to $15, because that provides even more of a base. We need to not only support our workers, but also our job creators with a fair tax code and access to 21st technologies like high-speed and reliable broadband. Municipal Wi-Fi, it's a pretty simple concept. And not only does that help create jobs and careers, it's also an investment back into our communities. That's my vision for a better future for this state and for this country. It's building a base and starting from the bottom up. I think that's it. I do want to remind you all to turn your clocks back too.
Thank you so much for coming today, and thank you for putting on this event. So, I, like probably most of you in this room, was really profoundly affected by the election of 2016. At that time, I was recovering from major shoulder surgery. And I had time to just take it all in. And I became very concerned about our country. And so I decided to dig in and do the research and really try to find out how this could have happened to this extent. And what I discovered really, really alarmed me. One of the things I did right after the election, I live in a town of about 1,000 people, Balsam Lake. It's about 2 hours from here. And I went to the local bar, and I sat next to a guy I know. He's also former Air Force. And I couldn't believe he voted for President Trump, because I've known him for a while. And I said, really, why did you do that? And he goes, I wanted to blow the whole thing up. And that really took me aback. And I could just feel the frustration. And I've been seeing this. All of us have probably seen this. So when I graduated from law school, I moved to Balsam Lake and opened up a private law practice. And I focused on guardian ad litem work. I don't know how many know what that is, but it's in Wisconsin. You have to be a licensed attorney and have special training. And it's advocating for the best interest of children and disabled adults. And the crash happened in 2008. By the time I opened up my practice in 2010, people were still kind of reeling from that, but they were still kind of struggling. And in a short amount of time, I noticed a change in people's attitudes. They were becoming more frightened, desperate. The family problems, as a guardian ad litem, you know what's going on in your community. You go to schools, you talk to families, and the problems had a lot of things in common. And a lot of these folks are working 2 jobs, and they can barely make it. They're not doing as well as their parents did, and they have children that they're so concerned about that they're not going to be able to take care of properly. And so this eats away at our society. And the other thing I discovered is that there is a heightened viciousness in our politics. I'd never watched cable news before. So I had time, I was recovering from surgery, and I turned it on, and I the rhetoric has gotten to a point where it is so toxic that it's part of the explanation as to why Congress has stopped working. I'm sure most of you recall the wave election in 2010 where we had a huge Tea Party movement. We had a bunch of new Congress people, representatives, get there. And while our Congress has had some issues in the past, this is when it really ground to a halt. Extreme views where they were threatening to default on the United States debt. I mean, think about that. And so now we've gotten to a situation where even the basic task of Congress to run our federal government isn't even being done properly and mindfully. So what I think is our system needs some help. There are a lot of folks in Congress who I think are there for the wrong reasons. I think they're there because they want the position, they want the status. A lot of these people have big money behind them. Our congressman has that. And one of the things he loves to do is get on television, I saw. And he gets on there and he says really insulting and divisive things. And that is exactly the opposite of what we need right now. Our country's hurting. And I think a lot of people really desire to have fellowship and belonging and progress and working together in our communities. And what we need right now are people that are in Congress because they're driven to serve. And that is why I'm running. I never belonged to a political party before. I would just, before an election, I would study up who are the candidates, what are the issues, go vote. After the election, I went to my county party and I got involved. I became its secretary, I became a delegate. I started knocking doors for a local judicial candidate for about 3 months straight. And I got to know the people in my county. And I learned a lot that way. I also worked for the state party and helped organize my county. And then I also went to Emerge Wisconsin, which trains Democratic women to run for office. So this was a real journey for me last year. And I made the decision, as I recovered from the surgery, to actually get into politics. Because what I realized is that our country needs people like you. You folks that are here and you're getting involved. I'm one of those folks that kind of voted and thought things were fine. But what I realized is the people that we're entrusting to represent us are not really watching out for us. So once I'm elected to Congress, here's a pledge I'll make to you. I'll have your back. And what does that mean? That means I will be your fierce advocate and steadfast guardian. And I want to have trust rebuilt. That is something that is eroded over time. We need to trust that our representatives will do the right thing even if no one is looking. And I also believe that we need to start addressing these really deep, tough issues. These other candidates have mentioned it. I think everybody knows our healthcare system has a problem. We need to make the commitment to universal healthcare for every single American. I am so fortunate I have VA care. That's how I got surgery. I'm almost 100%. I'm so grateful for that. I think every American should have that ability to do that. So I think that we should pursue Medicare for all. And one of the ways we can do that is allow people to start buying into that, opting in. And income and wealth inequality, this is at such a point right now that we haven't seen in our history for a long, long time. and, it's making people frustrated, and they feel like they can't get ahead. So we need to start addressing those root causes. So I'll leave you with this today. I really, really would be honored if you would support me and if you would vote for me. And once I get to Washington, I'll have your back. Thank you very much.
Climate change, and what if anything Congress, what if any action Congress should take to address it?
Well, we'll start it this way. Well, first of all, let's realize it's there. For some reason, there's a chunk of this country that's, see no evil, hear no evil, and just ignore it. But the facts are there. Science is there. There's many ways to, first of all, fossil fuel, the reduction in fossil fuel use is important. The fact that the president threw a big tariff on solar materials to make solar power shows the push of the petroleum industry and that to try to slow down the growth, because solar, wind power has been moving and has been growing quite well. You go to the southern part of the state and all the windmills that are out there right now, and there's more of them that are gonna be happening. It can happen. We gotta quit using those fossil fuels. We gotta start getting smart about this world. We don't have another option, folks. This isn't like, oh heck, we'll just move to Mars. No, it don't happen that way. And I don't really plan on eating potatoes, made from materials that Matt Damon used. But anyway, really, it's just a reckoning that people gotta, the ones who are denying it, we have to educate them. And the one thing, if you're gonna try to win an argument, when you have opposite sides, you don't win arguments by proving the other side is wrong. You win arguments by convincing the opposition you're right. That's a better way to go at it than saying, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong. You'll never get anywhere. Methodically get it done, that's it.
This area that we live in to have solar panels and windmills up?
If the public wants it.
How come it costs us $70 per kilowatt to produce wind compared to about 3.5 cents for coal or oil?
Talk to the coal companies and talk to the oil companies.
Why are we subsidizing the wind so much?
They're setting the tone. That's
No,
where you
the
have to
government's
change that.
setting that. The government, we are subsidizing the wind and solar, not the.
Coal has been subsidized for decades.
Yeah.
Where
There
do
was a
most of your
spill-
solar
there was a
panels and
spill
stuff come from?
Out in West Virginia, another one in Georgia, and they've just been held harmless for any of the cleanup.
That. The only way it's gonna be brought down is when you break down that barrier and open up this country's great entrepreneurial spirit. That's how that can be changed.
Okay, let's move on.
I'm sorry.
Is one of those facts that whether we like it or not, it is upon us. And I think the key issue is that it's multifactorial in terms of why we need to address it and how we need to address it. I think there's the issue of having a climate that we as humans have become accommodated to and built into that requires certain ocean levels and seashore boundaries. And as those go away, like Houston and New Orleans and the Outer Banks and New York City, that has huge economic costs to the United States. So it's an economic issue that we need to control climate change because it's going to lead to significant economic harm to our country if we don't. I think the next issue is it's a national security issue. We're $6 trillion in debt because we went to war to protect oil fields. And the entire Iraq and Afghanistan wars were driven by this need to protect oil coming in. And so it's an incredible subsidy that we put into the oil industry. And the national security, it turns out while parts of the US government were saying you can't put climate change into any of your documents, the Department of Defense is doing war gaming based on climate change and what that's going to do to our national defense. This is a national defense issue. We will be more secure if we are less dependent on fossil fuels. Even ISIS, I mean, you know, certainly we spent about, 8 to 10 years being consumed with the issues of ISIS in Syria. How did that crisis start? It was drought in the Middle East, brought about by climate change, that drove people into the cities where the urban unrest started, and the leaders of Syria started responding to that, and years later we had ISIS and all the troubles in the Middle East with that particular issue. So climate change ends up being an issue which you can't get away from. I think, you know, the cost issue is important. I mean, one of the reasons we have inexpensive carbon-based cost is because of huge investments in carbon-based energy over the last 100 years, including the whole defense needed to guarantee that oil tankers can safely get to the United States when the United States was very dependent on that oil. And I think our examples are with almost every technological change we've had. I mean, I remember buying my first personal computer, and when you think about it in today's dollars, you know, it's probably well over $10,000, and now, you know, for $500 you can get a computer that can do it. I mean, you look at the cost of light bulbs, you look at all these different things, that the more you produce it, the more you bring down the unit cost. We clearly have always made public investment in societal good. And we've done that in pharmaceuticals, we've done it in medicine, we've done it in energy, we do it in transportation, we do it in materials, we do it in the paper industry, we do it in logging. We've done it in every great societal good, that we make a public investment until it becomes a business, the efficiency of business. And so climate change fits into that too, in terms of the renewables on the energy. So I think that climate change is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. Congress can address this. It has addressed it in the past through fuel efficiency standards. So there are definitely ways that we can do this, and also in areas where it makes sense, you promote transportation mechanisms which are also have a lower carbon footprint. Now, that's not necessarily always going to be coming up Highway 13. I don't think we're going to have the Chicago L stretching from State and Madison all the way up here, but clearly there are ways that we address that. So I think there are ways that Congress definitely can address these issues.
I mean, what it comes down to for me is simply just money controlling a lot of the policies being put in place that are curbing things that we can do to stop the effects of climate change. And that just comes down to really money and electing a majority that agrees with science and with fact. Because I have a hard time believing that a lot of these folks out there actually believe that climate change isn't real. It comes down to the bottom dollar, and that's unfortunate, but it's the world we live in a capitalist society. And so the only way to change that is to convince the majority and push them forward.
Another way might be to make them the minority.
Yeah, exactly.
Margaret?
Let's do that. I believe that climate change is real. Step one. So, what we need to do, and it's gonna take time, is we need an all of government plan and response, and we need to include the American people and get them educated about it and invested in the outcome. And it has to do with economics, it has to do with national security, it has to do with saving our environment here locally, because these weather events are becoming, extreme weather events are now coming at a more rapid pace. You cannot not notice it. So we need to, you know, Congress can pass some laws to do what, take those measures, but we need to make a commitment on this and make it a priority. In my opinion, it's an emergency situation, and we need to stop kicking the can down the road. And as Kyle said, you know, big money is playing a huge, huge role in this. One of the ways that we can free ourselves from that is by fixing our campaign finance laws. That way, we will start having folks be able to get into office at all levels and not be beholden to these big money interests. So we should do it.
Thank you.
This is a really heightened issue right now. Super intense feelings about it. And regardless of how I feel or how you feel, we need to acknowledge that people do have these really intense feelings. One thing that I'm very concerned about right now is that it seems that the way our current administration is enforcing it is devolving into a more inhumane process. And that is so alarming to me. So, you know, we need to protect our sovereignty, and we do need to protect our borders. That is the fact of the matter. However, immigration, we need immigrants, in my opinion, to come into our country. It's, I welcome them. I view them as someone wants to join us and bring their skills and their knowledge and their can-do attitude, and I'm welcoming of that. So I think we need to not just have some immigration policy done in Washington that says, okay, this is what we're gonna do, but we do need to include the American people on these topics because we need to have buy-in on this. This is one of those really vital things where we need to include people and what they're comfortable with, and also educate them about what a great resource immigrants are and how they help our economy. So,
Are you in favor of it?
yes.
Okay. Kyle?
We learned from a young age that America is a melting pot, and we're a country built on immigrants. I'm an immigrant, we're all immigrants. Common sense immigration reform is, I haven't honestly done the research yet. I'm not exactly sure the ins and outs of how to make it better. I just know that it needs to be more fair, and much less exclusive. So, yeah, pathway to citizenship, whatever else.
Brian?
Yeah, it's a big, complex issue, and there are many parts of it. I mean, we have the most current one, what are the DACAs, or the children who average age is 6, came to the United States, have been raised in the country, are productive members of society, and now there are situations left in limbo because the executive order President Obama signed has now been vacated by President Trump, and the Congress hasn't been taking action on it, even though there were promises they were going to take action on it. So now that's the most pressing one, but we have 11 million workers in this country who don't have legal citizenship status. And just the logistics of extracting 11 million people out of the country would be tremendous, but again, this would actually weaken the fabric of our communities. In Wisconsin, that would be a $2 billion drain from the economy of Wisconsin if you extracted the workers, and especially down where more dairy farms around us, and certainly just the sense on the street is there'd be a lot of broken up families, a lot of fractured communities, and there'd be a lot of really unhappy cows who wouldn't be milked. So our agricultural industry is actually relying on people whose immigration status is not entirely clear. And so we need to acknowledge that these people have been here, some of them for decades, and are part of the infrastructure of our economy, and figure out, okay, what do we do with that group? Clearly as a nation, by definition, nation states can control who comes in and who comes out. Over half the people who are here whose immigration status is not completely legal and clarified did not cross the border. They came in on a visa and then they just stayed. So we have like this archaic system for tracking who came in and under what status. And so one of the first things is just find out who are the people coming in, who stays, who doesn't stay. And I think we have this whole issue of the power of immigration. And, you know, certainly my ancestors came here speaking German, and I'm the first generation who didn't grow up speaking German. And my grandparents would argue in German, just so we would know what they were talking about. So, I mean, the Marshfield Clinic exists because Carl Daggy was recruited by the nuns to come up to from Milwaukee to Marshfield because he spoke German. And these nuns, these German nuns, Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother, had all these German speakers, and they needed a doctor who could speak to the patients. So I mean, this is our heritage. This is who we are. So we're going to need immigrants for some reason. We need folks really on both ends of the economic spectrum and the employment spectrum, because there are clearly jobs which the farmers tell me, I mean, very well-meaning farmers said, I would give this job to anybody who shows up who I'm absolutely convinced they're a US citizen, but the line is empty. I have no one showing up, and I've got 450 cows. And so I hire the person who shows up, and I'm not real sure, but I'm gonna hire them because I think it's close enough. So we clearly need a way that people can come here and work and have a pathway to citizenship. I mean, you come here, you work, you're not always in the shadows. But then we have the other end of the spectrum. The medical care in Park Falls for the last 40 years has existed through various governmental programs. Initially, there was the National Health Public Service Corps. And that was back in the days where any med student could go and you'd get your way through med school and you'd get a stipend so you could live on it. And then when you came out, you said, okay, thank you. Now, as part of your service to society, go to places like Park Falls and serve the people there. Well, that program went away in 1980. And the next solution has been the J-1 and the H-1 visas. And so if we extract immigrant labor from the 7th district, we basically have no medical care left. I mean, in my department, you know, my colleagues are Jordanian and Nigerian and they're Indian, and they're incredibly skillful physicians who I work with every day, and we all join together to take care of incredibly sick people. And, you know, so I think the immigration discussion, it is complex. This is one where we need to get in the room and talk and say, okay, what are our interests? And this is where having outside people trying to juice up our energies and hate each other is so unhelpful to our communities. Yeah, I think it kind of ties into the whole Russian thing. I mean, the whole Russian interference, it turns out that maybe they were more in favor of one candidate versus the other, but their real goal was to get us to not like each other. And I think one of the major things, whether it's immigration or any other really tough issues we have to deal with, the best thing we can do as patriots is to be members of the community and stay in relationship with each other. So we work through some really sticky problems.
I met at one of the places up in the Wausau area, and we were watching the World Series baseball game. He was dressed up. He was a painter, paints houses. And he's a Mexican, and we, you know, watching baseball, and you know, we're having a nice conversation, and it got to that particular subject that you mentioned. And I asked him, I said, well, how long have you been here? He said, well, I've been here in this country ever since I was 3 when my parents brought me in. And I said, well, he says, well, no. And he was just kind of like more afraid to talk to me after I asked him that. And I said, no, don't worry about me. All I'm saying is that I just want to get your background. You married? He says, yes, I have two daughters, and showed me pictures. Guy works 3 jobs, works hard. He's just trying to make a better life for he and his family. His parents brought him here, and he doesn't, you know, if they sent him back to Mexico, he wouldn't know who the heck. There's no family there. His home is here. I still think that a lot of this uproar about immigration is based on racial discrimination. The man in the Oval Office kind of blurted out that one day and says, why don't people from Sweden or Norway immigrate here? Boy, if that didn't have set the alarms going off in your heads.
He said it that word.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
All I'm saying is that there are ways to, make sure that, this is being done right. And as the doctor mentioned before, our immigration thing has not really kind of caught up on some of these things. It has to be looked at, and has to be studied, but again, I'm all for everyone. This is, this is one big happy family as far as I'm concerned. And the more the merrier.
Next question.
Be willing to introduce and or support an assault weapons ban? Show of hands. Assault weapons ban?
Yeah.
And two, do you support arming teachers in our schools?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm a
Thank-
retired
thank you.
teacher, I can't help but laugh at that one.
Well, you know, my first political activism was in the sixties, when Bobby Kennedy was killed. And I grew up in a small town, northern farming community, and I went around with a petition.
If you have something to say.
I agree 100%. So there's a clear distinction between semi-automatic and assault rifles, and there's a lot of blurry lines. And I just learned recently that an AR-15, which was used in the Florida shooting, is not an assault rifle, and in the Vegas shooting too, it was a semi-automatic rifle that can be turned into an assault rifle with a bump stock. And so there's a lot of blurry lines, and people are throwing around this rhetoric and not understanding what exactly we're talking about. And yes, I think assault rifles belong in the military and only the military, and not on our streets. Guns are a huge part of who we are as Wisconsinites. I own a gun. I come from a family of hunters. And you're right. Weapons like that aren't for hunting, and there's just no place for them in society.
Gun owner, hunter, and things of that nature. So I mean, I think this whole, that we don't need to pretend that there's some black or white issue here of we're gonna take all the guns or you get to have every armament you want. And just like every issue we deal with rights and responsibilities that are coded into the Constitution, we have a discussion about rights and responsibilities of gun ownership. And we clearly have drawn lines that there are certain weapons that do not belong in civilian life. You cannot have a fully automatic machine gun. For over 30 years, that's been illegal. And clearly, guns that are only designed for assaulting humans, we need to talk about what do we do so that civilians are not using these guns. And whether or not, our challenge is there's millions of these guns in circulation now. And I think that's part of it. So that's where, what steps can we take? And I admire that the Florida legislature finally found it within themselves to take a step and say, okay, let's at least start having some reasonable discussion about who owns a gun, what age do you get a gun? So I mean, I think that is clearly the beginning of this discussion, and let's see where we can go with this, all the time respecting that there are millions and millions of very responsible gun owners who participate in this long-standing culture of Wisconsin of hunting. There are people who exercise their right of self-defense, and there are weapons designed for self-defense, not for assault. And so again, that's part of our society, that's part of our Supreme Court defined constitutional rights, and there's none of that is under threat in this discussion. And a lot of this comes down to what do you do to keep guns away from the few dangerous people who get them. And there are different states have these where you can do red flag laws. And so those have been helpful because people can be identified who clearly have been red flagged. And just like I can lose my right to privacy in my home if a judge decides that a search warrant should be issued to come into our home and do a search if there's probable cause. These laws fall into that same type of structure, that someone who's manifesting behavior where they're giving up they're acting irresponsibly, they are giving up their right to bear arms, and through the judicial process, they lose their right to bear arms. California has this. Well, what we learned yesterday is that too is not 100%. And there was a killing, multi-fatality killing. But I think this becomes important because clearly school shootings hit us all at this really deep level. I mean, it just violates us on so many levels of safety and childhood and where you should be able to go safe. It's extremely important we pay attention to what can we do to keep schools safe. And I actually talked to a young man who led platoons in Iraq. I mean, one morning I opened up my computer to see the pictures of 3 servicemen who had been under his command who had died the day before. I mean, this guy was in the thick of it. He's now a SWAT team member in Minnesota. And so I thought, well, if I want to know about guns, I need to talk to someone like him because he really, really knows weapons. And, you know, when he told me, he said, well, a school shooting situation, it turns out that what you want is not everybody armed in the environment, but you do want a professional. I mean, and whatever broke down, we'll find out months from now, they'll figure out what broke down in the Florida situation where there was a professional who did not intervene. But clearly in those situations, what you need is some degree of, you need a professional who knows how to stop the situation as quickly as possible. But that's not, when I think about my children's 3rd grade teachers having guns, I'm sure they would just be absolutely mortified at the notion. Yeah, I mean, so that's not the solution. But I think the other thing to recognize that if you want to find out who's at most risk in terms of the actual numbers, over 50% of the mass killings, including the ones here in Wisconsin, are linked with domestic abuse. And so it's clear that we need to really work at understanding that we don't have any problem in the federal government of doing this research, of finding out how do we find people who we need to talk to them and say, you know, it's time for your guns to be put in a safe place while we work through your problems. Because, I mean, whether it was, you know, a horrible event in Rothschild, whether it was Crandon 10 years ago, whether it was Abbotsford 6 weeks ago, that's the common denominator in all this. So I think there's a lot of discussion to have about guns, that guns designed solely for hunting humans, we need to have a real serious discussion about how those are not civilian weapons. We need to preserve people's rights to defend themselves. We need to celebrate the traditions of Wisconsin, which involve hunting. At the same time, we figure out how the very small percentage of gun owners who truly are dangerous, how we figure out how to say, you folks have lost your right because you are acting irresponsibly.
This is obviously
skills, and that's a How's it going?
So,
Hello, say hi.
that's awesome.
Hey.
Yeah,
Hey.
so.
Come on, man, do some Monopoly stuff?
Yeah.
I will keep that in mind because we have groups in 4 different cities. So even for our group activities, we would take our services for that group and then go to a local business, do it, and then come back together and say,
Where's the?
see if there's somebody else there.
You looking for a drink?
Anyone getting coffee?
Hi, I'm Jackie Norris.
Ryan.
Nice to meet you, Ryan. What's your last name?
Rudder. Rudder?
Are you DDR?
T.
Are you
2 T's.
DDR? Good, nice to meet you.
Can you if I fill this out? We get your contact information?
Man, Austin, you're high tech.
I'm just saying, some people, older Iowans won't do it.
Yeah, no, I get, yeah.
So I have both in the car, so if we have to like, because I can't read her.
No, it's hard. I did all the summary of caucus results, and a lot of the sheets are in cursive, and I think we still want to figure out like what name was what.
It's really interesting. My kids, well, one of them only writes in cursive. So poor thing, we moved when we lived in Italy for 2 years.
Yeah.
It was a British school, and so they only wrote in cursive, and he only knew how to print. So he had to learn how to do cursive, and now he doesn't print anymore. He just does cursive. And then my other boys, so like they're all.
Is it beautiful cursive too?
It is spectacular. It is like, I mean, I went to Catholic school until 5th grade, and it is like perfect. Yeah, it is. It's lovely to read, but.
Oh, it's a lost art. I mean, I feel bad. I had to Google cursive letters the other day. I thought you have to do checks in cursive.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Which I didn't know.
Oh, you thought you did?
I thought you did. My mom told me when I was little. So
I was taught that way too.
Yeah.
I did it up until like a year ago.
Yeah.
I saw someone write a check and use print. I was like, wait. I'm Rhea. Nice to meet you. You too.
So thank you. By the way. No problem. That's good. I had to Google how to make a cursive like G or something.
I know, we usually have, we're a smaller group because we're downtown and the other precincts, like 60 meets like on Mondays, like right down the road.
Are you in the West?
They are, I technically decided that because I like coming right from work. I stayed downtown.
Do you mind if I just need to ask too, like for your campaign
to go
staff,
with
would you mind if I
our
pass along
core group.
information?
Yeah.
You just had so many people who take promotions this year. I'm like,
Anything fair game to me.
I'm still here. I didn't want to just.
Yeah,
I can't buy anything, but.
And these candidates have come too, because some of the best conversations happen like this. I mean, John and I, we were in Northeast Iowa, so we were way up.
Like the corner or where?
Oh, no, Northeast. Northwest. Oh, north? Yes, Northwest. Thank you. And so we were kind of Rock Rapids and Sioux and Lyon. And you know, you're lucky to get 5 or 6 Democrats. Sit and have a conversation, prepare so because you can really get into stuff. You can really get into policy questions and bigger ideas and sometimes life is, yeah.
Honestly, I'd rather have you guys tear me apart than have it in the media. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather learn it. You know what I mean? Like not learn it, but like ask me the hard questions now so I can think on them, learn the answers. You know what I mean? Refine. You don't want to refine on WHO. I don't know.
Right, so then tell me what your ideas were based on the fact that the sales tax increased in our house last night.
The pie is getting smaller and everyone's chasing a smaller slice. Like we all know it's regressive.
Yeah.
So there's more poor people and the state's not stepping up, so the city's doing what it could. The fact that they did property forgiveness is kind of like the compounding regressivity.
I do say people were really confused.
Yeah.
Like, people really struggled. And I'm a high school government teacher, pretty educated, I know policies, and I generally thought I had a point of view going into it, but I think that there were a lot of people, Democrats especially, that were really struggling on this one. Like, because your automatic is, Bush is like, no, it's progressive, but then you're thinking, well, the city needs money, we gotta figure out how to fund it, and so it was really interesting to talk to people, because I don't know if it was lack of education or if we as a party should have been more clear positioned, which I know is hard because it's a technically nonpartisan. I don't know where
What was it? Or what is the position? I guess.
Well, what many Democrats, I think the union had formed a coalition, right? It was predominantly unions, and I don't know if they were just doing member education, really advocating progressive, that it was a regressive tax, and so they would say vote no.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I happened to witness at another small group, the Gray Area Democrats,
Yeah.
kind of right over by Birdland and that, right by that area. And Mayor County came to speak, and he laid out, he wants the money, right? And he's laying out the points, and then there were a couple people there that just really want to talk about what are the what is taxed, what isn't taxed. I think some people felt like, if we're going to give the city this money, let's spend it on homelessness programs or on real needs, right? Not necessarily the infrastructure needs of potholes and that kind of stuff. So I think, and it kind of made me wonder, should the party actually have should they have a position, take a position on these issues, or stay out of it? It's just, I don't know.
Probably worse to stay out of it. You gotta have a voice of, which way you stand. No action is really bad, I think.
Yeah, there were plenty of discussion groups going on Facebook, wondering what, because they had, I keep saying, it was a very slick, well-paid for ad campaign, vote yes. And I remember posting it for my friends, and then I thought, wait a second, there's no real need to this yes vote. There's not enough for me to go, I need to find an opposing position. It took me forever and 3 different friends to go look for actual stuff that said, here's a reason not to vote for it. But it was research.
Yeah, I only got it because I happened to be at a Democratic event where a community member, I just saw it, and I said, oh, can I look at that? So
it's nice. Yeah, we didn't have anything like that.
I thought you had the best question. You were saying how no one knows where the property forgiveness would go.
Yeah.
That's the question. Like,
So
are you getting help with your house, or is it just like big?
I'm looking in the market for a house.
Oh yeah.
In the house yet.
Right.
I love my house, and I would love for my property taxes to go down because they've increased every year that I've owned that house. That doesn't mean that I want to be.
You'd walk key, or they just go.
Well, yeah. So when I live right now, my house is nothing fancy. It's running down. It's over 100 years old, but I live there because I love it. I love the Roosevelt neighborhood. But I was like, you know what? I don't want my property taxes to go down by just like hundreds of dollars. That's not going to make a difference for me. And for me to pay more on products and services because I buy right in this area. I don't go anywhere else to shop. It is here. So for me to pay more in that tax just to get a teeny tiny bit off my phone, no, it wasn't worth it. And as a woman, it really wasn't worth it. I buy products that are at a higher price than some of the same things for men.
Are they still not? Are they excluded now, or are they not?
So as a woman, I was like, no, I'm certainly not going to do that. And if they can't tell me where that money for those property taxes are going, then no. Now, if they could put provisions in there that would really show that that money was actually going to the people that needed it the most, such as lower income families that own some of these houses who are being killed by those property taxes. Hey, you know what, if you could show me that the bulk of that money is going there rather than to my, the very wealthy corporation that I work for downtown, great, then maybe I would have voted yes, but instead I voted no. But it only was voted no by 200 votes, that's not a lot. People were very split.
Well, on the Facebook comments, people were still like, they were kind of confused, like, did I vote the right way?
Yeah,
it was really interesting.
A lot of people said, I voted yes, but I really didn't like it. Okay, all right.
I just felt like yes.
It shows the power of Facebook. These conversations.
Yep.
Certain image gets out there, it's hard to pull back.
Is there like mixed reviews on Facebook though?
Oh yeah, very. It seemed really split on all the indivisible groups.
It's always heated.
Yeah, it was really split, almost 50-50 people going, I didn't, or I did, or I did, but I didn't like it. It was really kind of weird. Okay, well, Austin, do you want to tell us how your campaign is going?
Oh yeah, I had my first protest in a blizzard yesterday. With you.
Were you over at Mike Pence?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The coolest part, honestly, was a group of women did what's that TV show called?
Was it Handmaid's Tale?
Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, and the signs were like, wow.
Out there.
I wanted to take a photo, but my companion was like, don't do that. They're a little too edgy. But it was really cool, it shows the paradox of this moment. And there wasn't that many people going into the Pence thing either.
No, I was really surprised. I don't know if it was, I know like we had a lot of people that were like, I can't come out in the weather, so I don't know if that happened to Pence too, but.
Where'd they have that at?
What was, it was Council Bluffs at the Mid-America Center, and it really, there was
Did it just look a lot less people?
there.
Was it a huge venue though?
It was a pretty big venue.
It was a big venue, but I feel like the parking lot was like halfway empty and like.
More people are back at the
You said
Bass
it was Blizzard, wasn't it?
Bellas, and then we're actually to see the Vice President of the United States.
What do you say it was Blizzard?
Yeah,
Comes out there.
so that's probably-
I don't know why most people would be like, no, not risking my life for
Right.
that.
It's not. Definitely not.
Okay, so what else have you been up
Yeah,
to?
so it was okay. Sorry, got stump time. Let me get this. I know Jackie knows all my secrets now.
No, I
Actually, you know my
Is
secrets.
that original?
Oh yeah. Well,
don't. We're just gonna play a game.
let's go play a game. And we just ordered like 30 of these. You can see these at your convention. Are you a delegate?
No, no.
Okay. You're just
I got one of these though, one of the original ones, I think.
By the end of
They
this
changed the piece.
Say what?
When they changed the piece on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have like the original one.
You do?
Yeah.
Probably worth money. So by the end of this campaign, to quote one of my primary opponents, when I say Monopoly, you say Austin.
Let's try it.
That's reverse.
No, I think that's the thing. We're all friends. Like it was Tracy Greenfield and I would be saying like on stage.
Yeah.
It was at the supper, the soup supper. Take Amazon. I bought this board game on Amazon. Oh.
Hi, welcome.
Amazon. Amazon is now worth as much as Walmart, Costco, TJ Maxx, Target, Ross, Best Buy, Ulta, Kohl's, Nordstrom, Macy's, Bed Bath & Beyond, Saks, Dillard's, JCPenney's, and Sears combined.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Come on.
Everything
I get a lot of stuff online for
I do
Amazon.
too. Wow.
Everything around Jordan Creek essentially equal to that one entity. Economic concentration is the issue of our time. It is, yeah, and we live in a second Gilded Age. I mean, this is what this era is. We saw what they did to President, the Koch brothers. They're just robber barons. Most Americans believe in climate change. They believe in our platform. So why? Why are we still debating these? Why do we have no state senator west of 35 in this state? There's no Democrat west of 35 as a state senator.
Really?
Mm-hmm. There's a few great ones running, by the way, and they would love your support. Vicki Brenner down in Madison County is one of them. But why? Why? I think the answer is this.
Is it just mostly rural?
Monopoly.
I know. Hey, well, we got a bunch of young volunteers. They're going to wear Monopoly Man costumes. You're never going to outraise Monopoly money. That's what Dave Young is. Dave Young is Monopoly money. He spent more in DC steakhouses last year fundraising than the average Iowan made. That check will always be bigger. On New Year's Eve, you probably were having fun. He was collecting $2,500 from Exxon Mobil. So have fun. I mean, look what we saw with that vote. The yes, no thing. Money doesn't equal victory. I mean, that's part of what this campaign is showing. So what I would like to say is economic concentration impacts you in 4 ways. See that card in front of you? It's probably the first ever Monopoly card. On the back is the 4 ways it impacts you. And number 1 is corruption. As the Koch brothers. Because when your company's that big, you have all that money to flood politics. And number 2, sorry, costs. You came up with thinking companies are competing for a business. Cable, look at cable. Insulin is actually a very popular one. You see insulin go like this the last 2 years, and that's because of monopoly. Insulin can get better. You always need insulin. It's a basic thing. Point number 3 is lower wages. You get paid less when companies have that much power. They set the wage. And point number 4, and I think the most important, is lack of respect. Employers don't treat employees like they used to. They don't have to. They don't care. They're that big. The example I talk about a lot is down in Creston. There is, trolley, candy, bowl of gummy worms. I think Hy-Vee has a big display on them right now for Easter. They're all made there. Or they were. That company's going through merger. Closed the plant, fired 250 employees 10 days before Christmas. Where's the respect? Why not wait 15 days till, January 1st? Let those families get through Christmas. These 4 things: lack of respect, corruption, higher costs, and lower wages are what monopolies do to your life. What's great about this message is we can sit here and talk and not talk about Trump. Because you know what Trump's going to do? He's going to blame the immigrant. I'm going to blame Tyson's. Because it validates anger and redirects it. But these companies are big. So I can't buy passion. So the best thing from this conversation is you go out and you say, monopoly, monopoly, monopoly. That's how this gets out. I know.
That was the cue. I'm sorry.
Well, follow me on Twitter. If you know us on Twitter, I'm pretty feisty, and I love graphs. And Facebook.
Are you an Excel nerd?
A little bit. I do Stata. There's like but data's important. We live in an age. Take your hospital. If you work in a hospital, use Epic Healthcare. One company controls 2/3 of the medical records in this country. They have that data, all your healthcare data, and they don't want other companies to use your healthcare records to make it really hard to port it in between. That's why you see all these tiny monopolies forming everywhere. So the other thing is, the long sheet I handed you guys, that's what I believe. Take a look at it. People don't trust politicians anymore, and part of earning back your trust is being frank with you. I think Iwan's own character at the end of the day. That's why we had Senator Harkin, Senator Grassley for so long. So take a look, let me know if something's missing, or if you disagree. I can tell you this is an older one. Our next one will have something on gun safety, gun reform. So, any questions I can answer for you guys?
Were they trying to redo the district lines?
Gerrymandering. That's why we need to win the governorship. Right now, Iowa's one of the few states that has nonpartisan, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't win back the governorship. They'll get rid of it. They'll try to institutionalize their power. I mean, it's a beautiful system. It's great for me because I have a nice square district. You ever seen those maps in Pennsylvania where they're like,
well, Polk County, isn't it like an arm? Is it District 4?
So I'm in
because I like Polk City. That's where I'm from. So
Polk City.
Yeah.
No, it's included in the 3rd. So the 3rd is like Des Moines, all the way Council Bluffs, everything south. So it's like, you know what I mean? At least you have like a quadrant.
Yeah.
But it makes us. That's why I was a swing state, because we have swingy districts. This district's super competitive. So.
And all of it, even the presidential campaign is kind of a swing state, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 2020 is gonna be like nothing we've ever seen before. If you guys are ready for it. No, I know.
I'm just surprised it's already next year's, campaigning for it. It seemed like it was yesterday.
Right.
But that's the best thing we can do for campaign finance is shorten the cycle.
Yeah.
Saying you can't campaign, because it's a slog. It's a year and a half. Say in England, was it 2 or 3 months before, or is it 2 or 3 weeks?
Sure. It's
Yeah.
You have a very short window.
Just have,
days or something.
imagine that. Just shorten the window. Say, force me to do my job. Because it's hard. Like if you have a young child, it's hard to do. You don't do this when you have a 2-year-old. I mean, that's part of the reason why I decided to run. Is like, I have to bop around.
Yeah.
So.
Austin, I'm a voter, so I guess I can ask this question. You mentioned gun control, and it's interesting because that's come up a lot. I'm curious, from a federal legislative perspective, what would you add to your platform or the conversation?
And I think we talked about this in meetup. I always want to root this in the Iowa conversation, because one of the biggest things I realized living in Winterset is there's tons of Blue Lives Matter flags. I love Winterset, but diversity is not its forte. But everyone knows the town cop. So we got to root this gun conversation in the Iowa context. In the Iowa context, 84% of gun deaths are suicide. So when we're talking gun reform, we're talking suicide prevention. And I think once you frame it that way, it's a lot easier to talk about withholding periods. Because a lot of times when someone tries to, usually it's something traumatic. Bankruptcy is filed, like divorce, so you rush out to that thing. Most of the time when people take pills, it doesn't work. And they get the mental health they need, they get that intervention, and they survive and they continue on. There's no coming back from that gun. And that's part of it is just, part of the governor's race, mental health care. People aren't getting that. So the gun thing, there's not, we could, raise the assault rifle to 21, do all these things at the federal level. We need the big package. And I think the bigger thing here, it's the money. The fact that the president of NRA literally an hour down this road, and Dave Young is third most money. There's a reason why Dave Young is doing nothing on this issue, and it's because of the money. So it's sad watching. You guys, the President Obama speech after Newton, when they remember when they tried to do gun stuff after the massacre of those elementary school children. And the president, San Diego, the president gave a speech. You could tell he was on the edge of tears the whole time. Because we can't even get something done when elementary school kids are butchered.
I worked at a daycare and throughout college, and my old roommate still works out there, and she was just texting me today, and they had to have cops come in today to show the teachers and the students what to do if there was a shooter in the building, and it's the oldest shooter in that daycare, 5 years old. It's just sad.
We're better than this. The thing is, most people agree with us. Let's not forget, most people want reform. It's the money. It's the monopoly money. These companies, until you take that out, they're going to keep nipping at you. So, let's seize this moment. Optimism. Sorry, you're looking at that face, Jackie.
No, I'm so interested.
But we need it's state and federal. We need to add all these little, and I think as a ticket, we need strong people in the state rep races all the way to the top. So, trickle down.
Have you had any of the young voters yet who are obviously incredibly passionate about this?
About the gun safety reform?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's honestly one of the most incredible things I've seen this year was that Marco Rubio thing in Florida. Have you guys seen that video?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, when that kid went into it for the money. But it's refreshing, because I think people are just sick of the canned answers. That's actually This is a little weird. My partner thinks with his head, I think with my heart. So we have a nice little duo. He's like good cop, bad cop.
One without
Yin and yang.
No, it's like there's certain things an Iowa politician are hard to talk about. Guns were hard. So that's why I researched the suicide and really learned it. But people know when you're dancing around an issue. But Iowans are too nice to call you out on it usually, but they know. I think people just appreciate frankness. Plus it's fun, it's easier. But I think young kids, I've been talking with students at Hoover and other schools, and it's amazing. We're getting into the weeds about net neutrality, different little issues, and just very Vice News I didn't really know much about, but how the powerfulness of Vice News.
Watch Vice News. Okay, write that down. It's something that you need to be watching.
It's funny. We got approached by one of the reporters. And I was like, "What's this?"
Vice News. It is a great, in-depth one captured story, in-depth dive.
Yeah.
Or they have their kind of news format where it's real quick world stories. You're getting 30 seconds to 60-second clips, but they just feel different than local news, or they feel different than national news. It really boosts to make a choice, be involved, have an emotional response to what you're watching. So it's good stuff.
And it's interesting. I realize, I don't know about you guys, I probably watch more YouTube videos than actual TV now. I made that change in the last year. We don't have cable. We don't
like Netflix.
But that's the hardest thing too with campaign. Everyone gets news differently now. You guys talking about Facebook, Instagram. I'm learning that's my new one right now. And the old small town papers still matter. Everyone has the way you consume news is probably different than a sibling, than your parent, than your special someone, whatever. It's very.
So Vice News is available on Facebook.
Is
You
it?
can get, yeah.
Is it on a regular TV channel?
It's on HBO? Yeah, HBO. And it's good. It's very impactful. You can sign up for their Facebook feed and you'll get those small snippet videos that will show you something. They're really in-depth stuff. It's really fabulous. It's great, hardcore journalism. It is, and it's wonderful.
What was that movie?
What?
That he was he like got really into like bad situations, but he was a reporter, and I can't remember who it was. It was recent too. It was like 5 years ago.
Not Michael Moore stuff.
No. Michael Moore. No, this wasn't like YouTube stuff. This was like an actual movie. And I'm just trying to remember who it was. I think Jake Gyllenhaal was the actor in it. I'll have to look up.
I wish I really want to see Black Panther right now. I just don't have time.
Oh, it's so
Is it
good.
good?
Yes. I'm sorry that you're campaigning so hardcore that you can't go see.
No, honestly, I watch.
It's really awesome.
I watch a lot of RuPaul. I just go.
It was Nightcrawler.
I just go
It's
instant
called.
TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My daughter loves that show.
I was in KCCI and they were like, tell me about RuPaul. I'm like, yes, I will.
As far as spending petty theft, someone's into a new career as a cameraman, and finds that a camcorder police scanner begins nocturnally forays across the city in search of shocking grisly crimes. Yeah, that's an interesting movie.
It's also slow life.
Well, Kevin, our like first district organizer, he was like, so I was looking through all of your congressional candidates, Twitters and everything. He was like, one of them watches RuPaul, and he was like, I love it.
It's a very popular show.
It's a good show.
Actually, it's really good.
You know, I'm putting on my list, Vice News. I'm 37, but I can learn.
How have your interactions been with some of the other candidates that are running, I guess, or at least running for our Democratic Party?
I will say, I mean, I think a competitive primary is really good. Because every day, first of all, I'm so much more polished than I was when I started. We're all trying to engage new voters. We're trying to polish our rhetoric. Like, it's just, you don't want to win, don't get me wrong. And we're like, it's funny, we're trying to draw a contrast and nice, like, still be respectful. The thing, I have to be careful. Problem with monopolies is you have to name names. Because Monopoly, you just think the board game. Problem is when you name a company's name, you put the biggest bullseye on your back. My big thing is the Bayer-Monsanto merger. Two companies will sell for nearly 80% of corn seed. A month after I wrote the one op-ed opposing the merger, they gave $5,000 to Dave Young, and they gave money to their lobbyists to one of my Democratic primary opponents. That's how this game works, though. But I know I can't take that money. So you take that check, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. Because once you also get on that treadmill, you don't stop. I mean, look at the banking bill being passed in the Senate right now. We are only 10 years out of one of the worst financial crises, and yet Democrats are voting for the repeal? I don't know. My jaw was dropped when I saw that. It's like, come on, that's politics 101. That's not good optics. And it's just, that's part of this monopoly thing, is you kept banks huge, and you thought you could regulate the monopolies. No, monopolies have money and they have power, and they will flood the system, and they will outlast you, and they will undermine you. That's how this game works.
So what's your plan going into the primaries? How are you going to win the primaries and get 35% of the vote so that it doesn't go to Democrats? Is that just walk around and put out like,
yeah. Well, it's like, I would say we are running congressional campaign. We have a thesis, a mission statement. And you're seeing it's hitting nationally. Jennifer Lawrence was on Colbert's show last week talking about monopolies. Jennifer Lawrence. New York Times Magazine did a big thing on it. The Nation magazine. We're trying to be the first monopoly campaign. And that is, this was something, we're getting a big LGBT endorsement. We'll be announcing soon. I'd be the first ever federal gay queer person to be nominated in Iowa. And that is historic. I don't want to be known as a gay candidate. It's a fine line. But also, but then we're doing our research. The first gay person to run for Congress in America was in Des Moines, in Iowa, 1984. We were the third state to legalize it, so it's kind of, I think we get this 35 by popping, which is being different. And that's why I've made sure we have the biggest social media in our race. Because of Facebook, you guys are talking. Facebook's powerful. It's kind of scary how powerful it is, but it is.
You guys have campaign things on like Instagram and all that stuff too?
Instagram, I'm sorry. I picture everything on Instagram. On Twitter, I have down because it can be sassy, it's graphs. Insty's like, what made me about Instagram, I upload a photo, it's like, bing, 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 right away. Do you open Instagram all the time on your phone?
More than I'd like to admit.
Really?
Yes, I'm on it.
Yeah, you too?
I like hardly use Facebook. I mostly use Instagram.
Yes, what about you?
I don't use Instagram. Facebook,
Okay.
Twitter.
Facebook and Twitter?
I didn't really use my Facebook until like I didn't. I'm like, now I have to use Facebook all the time.
It is. It's each demographic kind of has their different.
My kids are Instagram, Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat's
Snapchat too.
Yeah.
Those are, I
Well,
have Instagram and Snapchat. I don't necessarily go on them as frequently or as regularly. I mean, I must go on Facebook and Twitter at least 20 times a day.
Why Twitter alerts? Like that, they're great.
I did turn off a little much.
Your what?
My Twitter alerts. That was one thing I turned off. So I just go in.
That's what's hard. Literally, at the end of this meeting, I'll look at my phone. You'll see. Ping, 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 ping. Keep doing this. Sorry. It's the beauty of this moment. We need to rethink everything with the election of Donald Trump. We can't ask ourselves why getting in November. There's too much on the line. We need to win back this seat. We need to win back the first congressional, maybe even the fourth, the governorship. And there's a lot of state level races we could win. So that's the fun of this moment. It's sad that it took this darkness. We could seize in a really cool era. So I'm talking too much now, Jackie.
I'm enjoying it. Speaking of the governorship.
Some guy named John Norris.
Share.
But also, I want to give you a pass. You don't, if you want to stay, that's great. But
Oh, yeah.
also know if you want to go, we can play college.
I'm fine.
Just I want to give you the easy out.
Oh, no,
The
it's-
access.
I feel like the best thing about these are actually before and afters.
Okay, good. So I'm Jackie Norris. My husband John is running for governor. This is him. Here he is. And by day, I work at Goodwill, Central Iowa. So we're headquarters Northwest 86th Street. And what I love about my day job is that it's truly connected to why I'm a Democrat. And so I wake up every day and we focus on providing skills training and job placement to individuals with barriers. So individuals with disabilities, ex-offenders, refugees. And so it's crystal clear why we fight as Democrats. And I'm really lucky to have that job. And we also have 3 kids, Hunter, Cole, and Sam. They're back here. Hunter and Cole are 14, Sam's 12. They're all at Merrill Middle School, which is right down the street, and it's a joy right now.
Merrill.
All there.
I'm sure if you ask them, I'm sure my son is not, he's popular, but he's a stinker. So
What's his name?
Miles Schoonover.
Okay, do they do sport? I've heard the name Miles.
Well, he's in intramurals right now.
Okay, is he in 6th grade? So Sam,
Yeah.
and he's a boy, so Sam might actually,
Yeah,
Sam
Sam
does not
might
acknowledge
actually.
girls exist. He's in 6th grade. But he might know.
My daughter's in 6th grade
Oh, is
too.
that right?
Yeah.
It's a fun
She's
age.
12, yeah.
So at Merrill?
No,
Or-
Polk City.
Polk City,
Okay.
that's right, 'cause
Polk.
you're in Polk City, yeah.
Are your kids 6th, 7th, and 8th grade?
So twins that are in
Oh my
8th grade,
goodness.
and yeah, so, but they're good. I mean, look, I'll kind of meander just a little bit, but when John decided that, or talked to our family about doing this, one of the biggest and earliest considerations was the kids, right? And they're really strong, confident kids. They're good kids. They do sports. I mean, they can hold their own, and we cut a deal. The only, as is evident by this picture, the only deal was that they would only have to get dressed up once. So you will notice they're all in t-shirts because, yeah, because it's, that's the thing that stresses us out. Like, why do we fight? We fight because we make you guys dressed up. So,
Totally attended primaries.
yeah. What? Yeah. But every other waking minute, I'm just out proudly supporting John. So, and I always like to start these conversations by saying thank you, because you're here, right? You're committed Democrats showing up because you care. Maybe some of you have made phone calls. Maybe you have knocked on doors. Maybe you've had doors slammed on your, face or whatever happens, or people, tell you awful things on Facebook, but the work's hard. And John's done the work and I've done the work. Between the two of us, we've worked for every presidential candidate since 1988. he started that with Jesse Jackson, and then we just kept going. Al Gore, John Kerry, you name it. And then we both worked really hard, me especially, on the Obama campaign. So that was probably one of the best campaigns personally, because it was such a moment of hope for me and for my family and for the state. And sometimes I wonder, how the heck did we get from Barack Obama, gay marriage, right, and to all of a sudden now where we are? Like, that just happened in what felt like a blink of an eye. When people ask why John, I always say three things: vision, values, and experience. So his experience, by contrast to any other of the gubernatorial candidates, it stands above itself. He's got extensive experience in state government and federal government and international global government. He was the chief of staff for Tom Vilsack in 1998. He was chief of staff at the Department of Agriculture, USDA. He also, and what's important about those two experiences, you have hundreds of thousands of staff and huge budgets, and that's your job, right? So he knows how to manage those things, which are pretty important administrative responsibilities of a governor. He's also represented the United States in Rome, Italy, as the U.S. representative on agriculture policy in Rome, and that was a really neat opportunity for him to speak on behalf of the U.S.
Did you get to go? Did you get to go?
Yeah, we all went.
Yeah.
It was awful. Rome was, we were lucky when we went to spend 2 years in Italy. It was at a moment when kind of leading up to Trump. But talk about it, there's no gun violence in Rome. There are no guns, right? There is a love for food, a passion for food, and wine too. But also at how food brings family together. There's a purity and a beauty around that, and that I think coming back here, it was pretty stark, right? And when you live in this state, I mean, what do we love about Iowa? It's land, it's beauty, it's natural beauty, and we talk too much about, whatever kind of corn it is that we overproduce. So anyways, but on John's experiences, both the agriculture and the executive level experience, he also was an energy regulator for the Iowa Utilities Commission and for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and has spoken around the world on clean energy policy. He and Tom Vilsack were actually led the charge on a lot of our wind energy. So an excellent set of credentials on two really important issues in Iowa, energy and agriculture. That's our future. And we have to innovate and think big and think differently, but those two things are critical to our economic success. He also is a kind of an old lefty farm progressive. He, in the 80s, led the Iowa Farm Unity Coalition. This was during the farm crisis when a lot of our farmers were losing their property, taking their lives due to loss of land, bankruptcy, things like that. And so that was his first forte, I think, into politics and progressivism and fighting up at the State House for rural issues. And I think maybe I'd take that and connect to why is John so excited to run right now. He's a farm kid from Montgomery County, Red Oak. Grew up on a farm, he's done the hard work. Sometimes he tells the boys, and I way too many times, how much detasseling he's done. Which gets a little annoying. It is hard. Yes, it is hard.
Especially when plants are 3 feet tall, and you have to bend over to get them off.
Yeah. But
or they make it really tall, and you're the short person like me.
But what I think is interesting about that is when John talked about running, he was very clear that this was not going to be a typical Democratic campaign. A typical Democratic campaign, you go to your 10 big counties where all the votes are, and you kind of dabble in the rest of the counties, but you're going where the votes are. And he has been doing exactly what he wanted to do on this campaign. He is in all 99 counties, but not just saying, oh, I got there, so I can say I got to all 99. He's in there, he's having the conversations, he's really digging in deep in rural counties, and he's passionate about it. And I think he also knows that economic adjustments and justice transcends rural and urban. You know, they may be dealing with capos up there, but at the end of the day, people have the same land use issues, whether it's urban or rural, water quality issues. What people need, and this kind of gets to John's agenda, and it's not overly sexy, but when you don't have a lot of money in your budget, you actually can't be overly sexy. So the building blocks of an agenda for every county have to be a good public school, a good public hospital, high-speed internet, good jobs at the right wages of that community, and access to clean water. I mean, that's really, that's it. And then really celebrating regional economic development and allowing regional economic development. Some of the best projects are when the state, the county, and the local community come together and make regional decisions. You know, it's leveraging funding, right? You match the funding and you get what a community actually thinks is going to be helpful for them. And so, you know, that's a long way of saying, in my husband John, you've got vision, you've got somebody who's going to walk in and do the job on day one. He's done it before. He knows how to put together cabinets and all of the things that have to happen in the state. And you've got a fighter, right? When he talked about whether or not he should do this, he was very clear that this is going to be a 4-year, not the campaign, but a 4-year slog, because we can't just win the governor's race. We need at least one house. So I think it's great that a lot of governor's candidates go out and say, on day one, I'm going to do this. Well, you're not going to do it unless you actually have one of the houses in the legislature, and you can't accept anything less. So just about one of the only things you can do right off the bat is the Medicaid privatization decision. That is one that you actually, I think, pretty sure have the power to take on, and you will, because we've all seen the debilitating effects of that. And yet it's really scary to think about how you're going to roll that back, because it will not be smooth and it will not be easy on a lot of the hardest hit people. So I think I'll end there. I'd ask you for your support. I like to say we are the poor campaign that's rich on ideas. In My Husband John, you have a complete and total policy wonk. I mean, he gets issues from the top all the way down to the actual implementation phase, and we're going to win because we're in all the counties, right? We're not going to be on TV for the next 6 months or 3 months or however long, but we'll be competitive enough to get to the voters, to get to 35%, and to get to it by using the whole state, not just 10 Democratic counties. So learn about John. If you haven't met him, ask him the tough questions. He shows up everywhere. He goes to all the forums, and if he's not there. What?
Is this great photo of him in Center Park and his beard, mustache?
Oh yeah. So
back when Harkin had hair.
Yeah.
You know, it's often scary when the first time I met, so one of the things, I mean, I didn't talk about all of John's bio, but one of the things about John is he owned a restaurant in Greenfield. So Greenfield, when John worked for Jesse Jackson, he was a state director. And this was kind of during the farm crisis era, and John agreed to do it only if Jesse Jackson would allow John to put the campaign headquarters in Greenfield, because he wanted all of those reporters who fly into Des Moines to actually have to drive and see devastation of these farmlands and understand what the farm crisis meant and looked like. And so anyways, John ended up staying in Greenfield, Iowa. He bought, if you've been there, you know the old hotel, right? He bought the restaurant there. He and Don Stanley. And and they were there for years trying to fix it up. But anyways, I met this woman and she goes, well, I knew John because one time I saw him sitting at this park and he had this laundry line out from his doorknob to the tree, and he was drying out he was air drying his laundry, and I'm sitting here going, oh my God. He's so cheap, of course, he wouldn't spend quarters on a dryer. But anyways, good guy. I hope you get to know him. He is what he is, as most people would say. He's not hiding anything, and we live at 58th and Woodland. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm generally pretty good on policy. We'll steer you to his staff who can answer the questions. Any questions? Good. What? Yeah, Facebook, Twitter. He's a happy little Twitterer. but that's where I found one. Yep. And a website, it's Norris, www.norrisforthepeople.com.
Fun fact real quick, go to IOAF.com, it's also our website. It's our hashtag.
What is it?
IOAF.
What's the AF stand for?
My initials, Austin Craig.
Yeah, same with you.
I love that joke.
I'm curious, and can I just ask one question?
Yeah, please do.
What are you looking for in a gubernatorial candidate? Have you thought about that? And maybe you haven't, and that's okay. I'm an old high school government teacher, so I taught for 5 years, so I always ask questions. Johnston, Perry, and Ames.
Substitute?
No,
Yeah.
no, really,
Oh, really?
full time, yeah. So
Really?
I worked in politics for about 8 years, and then depending upon Al Gore, I was working for Al Gore, and depending upon your interpretation of history, he won or lost, and I was out of a job, and so I went back to school and became a high school government teacher.
And recently, or?
No, that would have been in 2000 to, and then through the Obama election, because then I went to work on the Obama campaign. That was 2006.
Okay. But we lived in Ames before I moved to Polk City.
You kind of looked familiar.
Yeah.
Did
I have a daughter that went to Ames there in West Ames, but we moved from Ames to Polk City in 3 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah. But I mean, I've probably seen you around in Ames, maybe somewhere.
Yeah, because we lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah, I've lived there since 2007, around there, so.
Okay.
I want a governor who is actually going to, there's plenty of really giant issues out there that I think that we're all concerned with. The mental health issue in Iowa seems to be bubbling to the surface, especially in our area here. But I'm more concerned about the property taxes, my safety of my kids at school, and in general, keeping Iowa and the way it is. Like, I mean, as far as like how nice we are, and I'd like economic growth to happen for the least of our citizens, rather than just the people who are up and up and keep moving further and further away from the city. I feel like that economic split is really starting to manifest itself really clearly, and that's a problem.
And I think even more so you see it in Polk County, right?
Yeah.
Because you see that flight to Waukee and further. That's where I notice it the most.
Yeah, I mean, we see that. I mean, you don't want to call it urban flight. It sounds like they're fleeing the cities to like leave some horrible conditions, and it's not. We have great communities here right in the city and around, but I do see this economic growth being pushed further and further and further out to the suburbs, and that concerns me.
Because there's more development on the outskirts than it is actually in town.
Yeah, but there's also this, are the schools better out? What, there is this sense of.
The inner city schools are terrible.
You see it in Cedar Rapids a little bit too, and even in Iowa City, it's like this. Yeah.
My buddy from Arkansas, the thing that shocks me most about Iowans is people here identify themselves based on their high school, not college. Because high school is a signal. You know, if someone says East in Des Moines, you know it's different than Johnston.
Yeah, that's where I went, and I went to the University of Iowa after, and whenever I'd meet someone there that was from the Des Moines area, they're like, oh, what school did you go to? And I'd say East High School.
I love it. I like Jefferson. I'm like, I think, like, look at me now. You know,
I love the East too.
It's the biggest school in the state, isn't it? The biggest high school?
By square foot. But by population, I think it's like.
Okay.
It could have changed. It's like by 10 schools.
Yeah, it's very close.
Okay. There's a lot of East pride.
Oh yeah.
I'm a junior at Iowa State in mathematics, and I'm going to get an MED. I'm going to be a teacher too.
Very good.
And I think education it should be an important topic because, you know, we're learning about how, you know, Iowa used to be almost the top of education. Now we're pretty low. And I think it's, you know, we had recently a bill that was being considered like for voucher programs and eliminating the Department of Education, things like that, and that's scary. It seems like that would hurt schools and make it worse. So I think it's important to get the governor and outlaw.
I think it'd be interesting, and you maybe haven't done enough of the practicum time yet to have an answer for this, but imagine you actually got 2 or 3%. We feel like a lot compared to the pathetic 1%. As a teacher, right? If somebody said to you, what would you do with more money? What would be the best thing for your school to do with more money? What specific strategies do you think money is well spent? Yeah. I mean, what I've heard, it's interesting, what I've heard, you never hear wages first. And I love that teachers are not responding with wages first. I mean, wages are on the list, but one of the things that they've talked a lot about is class size, right? Not just at the elementary school level anymore, but at the middle school and the secondary level, at the high school level, because the class sizes are just getting bigger and bigger, right? And the population is getting even more and more diverse, right, with less resources. And so it's funny, they talk about things like, and I've heard John talk about this, class size, ELL, ESL programming, it has to be, and then much more thoughtful senior year, junior, senior year. And I think Kim Reynolds, to her credit, is really trying to focus some of the conversation around career development, career thinking, getting the right skills to be able to exit out into whatever path people want, 4-year, 2-year, technical, wherever. But that's, and I taught high school government, right? So by senior year, there were plenty of students that had a lot of free time, and they could have been just thinking about the next step, or we could have been doing a better job of preparing them for that next step.
The thing that kind of scares me and angers me the most with K-12 is some of these small towns that try out the free reduced lunch rates. You go down to Mount Air and it's like 70 or 80%. You're like, we're starting these towns right up to 62%, I believe. And you talk to a teacher there, the number is always higher because high school kids don't want to sign up. So you have, first of all, you have these high poverty rates, and they're surrounded by some of the world's best soil. The paradox of that is, it makes you, and then on top of it, rescue teachers become social workers too.
Here, I can leave them, so you can hand them out. I apologize, I'm going to scoot out, but I just want to say thank you. Also,
Yeah, good to see you too.
Be with you. It was very kind.
It was really terrific to meet you.
Okay, absolutely. See everybody around.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or anything? And then we can always end early, we don't have to stay forever.
I was actually might just go out there and like
campaign. So campaign in the coffee shop?
I've seen it in people do that so far. I think it's a good spot for that.
You've seen candidates?
Catch people off.
I haven't seen candidates that I've seen because it's out doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen candidates out here.
Questions I'm going to go back to a question about Hot 35. Our campaign's interesting because we're trying to prove that you can run a monopoly campaign nationally. There's also the power of Iowa's other caucuses in 2020.
Sure.
You know what I mean? We're trying to basically cobble together a really interesting coalition of like Council Bluffs, because this message plays really well with working class whites, plays really well with Des Moines millennials, and rural folk. So you know what I mean? All these, you know, who would have thought? That's what we're trying to stitch together. So like Roosevelt's like my least. It's the hardest. Monopoly. This message is the hardest in the suburbs. But there's a lot of voters who didn't vote last cycle. Part of that is giving people a reason to vote. And I don't. It's funny. You see that issue card I gave you? There were 2 things my advisors vetoed on it. Puerto Rico should be a state. It's a colony. Territory colony.
It should be a state, but I understand why they vetoed it.
Yeah, I do too. But I want, like, I'm telling you.
What was the other thing?
I think marijuana should be legal. And I think we're gonna, it's a generational, first of all, I went to Grinnell, you could probably guess it. It's also generational. You look at the numbers, most people are fine with it. Colorado's doing fine, it's another crop.
Talk about a huge revenue source for the state
Yes.
of Iowa. Can you imagine what
Yes.
that would do?
You have wineries, imagine these little marijuana things you go to out in like Winterset, like, it's gonna happen.
It would be an amazing boost for our.
But there's so many people, and it's usually young men of color with these criminal records. They get, and it really derails your career. And actually, honestly, the kids who push me the most are the high school kids. And I just told them straight up at Hoover, yeah, I support it. Like, I don't want to, I'd be lying to you if I say I didn't. So actually, you might make a bigger splash with that one. But it's fun, you're the first group I told, besides high school kids. Because I don't want, what?
What's your thoughts on prison reform? Did I skim by that? Do you have any opinions on it?
Yeah, there might be a little thing.
Start reforming mandatory minimum.
Yeah, getting rid of mandatory minimums, and there's no reason why people should be making profit off these prisons.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so much more expensive. There's a great quote by Horace Mann. He's a famous educator. That, like, you know, like a balance scale. It's schools and prisons. The more you spend on one, the less you spend on the other. And so what's happened is, also prisons are there to rehabilitate people, not punish. That's like we've lost that mindset. You want these people to leave and be productive members, come back, not be marginalized, give them the right to vote. They used to. Governor Vilsack, let them vote. Let them be productive members of society. Don't ostracize them, because it'll repeat itself. You pay more. So, I feel like you have a question? No. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. And
Thank you.
follow me on Twitter. Iowa AF.
I was just ask you, it's like, was there, I thought there was one that was just your first and last name.com too.
So yeah, that's what it is. We bought like 10.
Oh, I was gonna say, because I remember that, I thought there was more than one website.
And then I don't think Miss Norris got what AF also means.
Oh, sure.
That's what the hashtag is so great. Sorry, I giggle every time I do this, so it was like,
I have to tell you, I feel guilty every time I hear you start speech because I buy everything on Amazon. And now I'm like, oh, I need to read this.
oh no, it's well, the problem, you two both know it, so I'm
It's a
trying to like mix it
convenience,
up.
it's a convenience of it
so
too.
easy. I do so much of my clothes shopping on Amazon, not just online in general, and like.
Plus the cost, you know, if you go into a store,
But
the cost
that's
is
the
a
thing
lot
about
more
it.
than when you get it on.
I don't know if I told you guys, I bought this on Amazon. Because we live in Winterset, there's no place in Madison County, Iowa, you can buy this for me. Shopco don't carry it. That's part of Monopoly, is you only have one option. We ordered dumb things on Amazon all the time. We ordered sponges the other day. Cause I didn't want to, it was the blizzard out, I didn't like want to have to like truck up to Walmart.
Is it a monopoly or is it just a contract with the maker of the board games?
Yeah.
Is it just like where it's just one distributor that's got a contract with them?
Well, I'm just saying there's no place to buy it. Because like all the toy stores, everything else is gone out of business.
What I'm saying is Amazon only have a contract with certain carriers or the company directly.
They do,
Yeah.
well, yeah, they do only have contracts with certain carriers of products.
So I mean, that's probably why you couldn't find it on anywhere else, is because
Well, I could've gone to
they're only
Target.
going.
Yeah.
I could have gone to Walmart.com, all those.
I think a lot of times Amazon, they actually get that stuff from those, don't they?
They might do exclusive deals, certain products.
With like Walmart stuff saying, you know, hey,
Yeah, I mean, it's.
I'll ship this to you.
They want, when you go to buy something online, what's the first website you go to? Well, I go to Amazon.
eBay.
I have a wish list. The best thing, the most evil, brilliant thing Amazon did is create the wish list. Does it have wish list?
Almost every website probably has it now.
Yeah, but Amazon's really good. I don't know. My wish list is like 10, it's just every book I ever want to buy. It's like 10 pages long, or every DVD I want. And usually when you get like a little cash, like, I'm gonna go to the wish list.
You just save stuff there and then
With
you
Amazon
go get it.
Prime, like we have Prime, it's just like anything you want, 2 days.
Yeah. But it's like what, $40 a month or so?
No, it's only,
It's like $100 a year.
you know, I was gonna say, it's like something like, I want to say $7 or $8.99 a month, cause like I pay for it monthly.
Yeah.
And then I also have the Prime Video access then too.
So I don't think it's, I refuse to pay Prime. So I'll wait a week, but
I'm getting a little
Because you're-
upset with
you're
them
not
because they
sure if,
won't
like,
officially
well, I don't
announce
really
that
order
they've
that
dropped
much
the
or
NRA. So
anything.
I'm like, either you will drop the NRA or I will drop mine. So, but I still haven't, I'm waiting for them. to
I'm
announce
shocked
it.
Amazon still hasn't done that.
Nope, they haven't.
I follow.
If you talk to their service reps, like I was like, look, I'm gonna drop my Prime membership unless you drop the NRA or stop your affiliation with them. And they were like, we've already done it, we've removed all the NRA products from the website, blah, blah, blah. They say this on their thing,
So you can order a
but
gun
yet they
on
won't
Amazon?
announce it. So they won't like actually say we're officially ending this relationship. So, I don't know, I'm still like,
You can actually buy a gun on Amazon.
I don't know, can you? Well,
I don't
you
know,
can buy
I-
NRA products, you can buy hats and t-shirts, or you could. I don't know if they're on there anymore.
Yeah, that'd be scary to buy a gun, right?
Yeah. Well, you can buy them online, I think, at certain sites. But I mean, as far as Amazon, you know, like.
God, I remember being 20 trying to buy alcohol online. I was wondering, like,
I wonder if this works.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for coming out and
Thank you guys so
speaking.
much.
Yes, thank you. Have another one soon. See if I can get more people out.
Hopefully it's not
I want
snowing.
more people to come and join our conversation. It's
I'm
good.
surprised the snow hasn't been starting to stick to the
Yeah,
ground
sure,
yet.
sure, sure.
As much as it's been snowing yesterday and today, and it's just wet roads and it dries out.
Yeah, it's kind of like this weird purgatory type of thing.
Like it's snowing so slow that it just melts before it even.
It's better than my son's.
It took quite a tumble.
Real quick, guys. Let me tell you about this. We're doing the cool new thing. Did I show you this?
Is that art?
So I posted the first thing that you were like,
Yeah.
the people like producing art and you were like.
So here's the thing. This is a dark moment right now. So what? We got to kind of help this. We're doing this for project. Whatever you think that it is. So this is one of the first ones we did. Then we did it. And so we're gonna have lunch.